This is the meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals, and it is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to Section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code and by the Anderson Township trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary, Ms. Hudson, will you please call the roll? Or Betty?
Brian Ellis.
Here.
Steve Haber.
Here.
Fred Hayes.
Here.
Rick Overschmidt.
Here.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Thank you for coming to this meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please be aware that this meeting is audio and videotaped and may be carried live on television. Now I'd like to outline the procedure. A summary of the appeal is presented by staff. The appellant will present its case. The board members may then ask questions of the appellant. After that, all persons supporting the appeal will be permitted to testify one at a time after being recognized by the chair. Those are finished. Those in opposition to the appeal will be permitted to testify and/or ask questions of the board after being recognized. All persons wishing to testify, whether for or against an appeal, may do so only after being sworn in. In testifying, each person must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, and state their name, address, affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes, although that probably won't be necessary tonight. Please direct questions and comments to the board. Now, would all persons who may give testimony this evening please stand, raise your right hand, and swear or affirm? So if you think you might testify, please stand up now. You have to be sworn in, even if you just think you might. Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you. Please be seated. And are there any changes to this evening's agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. I'd like to call for motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Next item of business, approval of minutes of April 3rd, 2014. And I would like to say, just for the record, although I was not here, I have reviewed the draft minutes and as well as the video online. So I'm prepared to act on the minutes and hear the case. So
I received one comment from Mr. Hayes and did go ahead and make that correction.
thank you. I saw Mr. Hayes commented on a correction to the listing, and we have that corrected. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 3rd?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. All right. So, Ms. Hodson, can you give us the background on where we're at with case 4, 2014?
So this is actually a continuation from last month. The board asked the applicant for additional information. So just to kind of catch you all back up, the variance request was to allow a 15-foot by 25-foot garage addition located within the front yard setback. This particular property is a corner lot, so they do have 2 front yards located here on Evening Whisper as well as here on Emmabelle Place. An aerial photo of the site. This was the original site plan submitted along with that application, and the board requested both elevation drawings of the structure as well as a landscape plan. Here's that submitted landscape plan. It's a little clearer on the printed copy that you all have before you. And we also have the elevation drawings that were submitted. So you all continued the case and did leave the public hearing open, so at this time you can request any additional information from the applicant or ask any questions that you may have.
Okay, so the case remains open, and we received some additional information. Does anybody have any questions for staff on this?
Yes, Allison, I know that we received one message from a Gene Perkinson in...
That's the wrong case.
Sorry? We have no information.
did receive
from
an
any-
We received one for this.
We did.
From Mr. Dubuck.
That's what I thought. Okay. Have we received any other messages
that's
from
all.
any neighbors? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, maybe we'll give the applicant an opportunity to come back up. Is Mr. and Mrs. Krupp here? Mr. Krupp is here. If you have any additional remarks you'd like to have based on this additional submission.
I really have no additional remarks other than the purpose of answering any questions about the drawings that were submitted. The detail on there mentions that everything on the house is made to match the existing home, so the brick will be the same, the trim will be the same, the windows will be the same, even the garage door will match the existing garage door.
And the roofing?
The roofing, yes. And the house is new enough that we shouldn't have any difficulty finding all those items.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Krupp?
I just have one comment since
Yes.
I was the person requesting the additional
Oberschmidt.
detail. Thank you very much. It's much more helpful to us to look at
Okay.
it in this format. So
Okay.
I know it was inconvenient for you, but I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Krupp? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Krupp. Is there anybody else here this evening to speak in favor of the application as the public hearing remains open? Anybody opposed? Okay. All right. Why don't we go ahead and close the public hearing on that? And then what we do is we will hear the next case, and then we'll proceed to have discussion on both cases after that. So you're more than welcome to stay. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next case this evening is case 5-2014, submitted by Cynthia Franklin at 6811 Salem Road. Ms. Hodson, can you give us the background on that case?
Sure. This property is zoned C residence, and the variance is to request a 6-foot-high privacy fence to be located within the side yard area, where our zoning resolution only permits fences at 6 feet in height and privacy-style fences within the rear yard, per section 171.9 of our zoning resolution. Here's a location map of the subject property. You can see that here, as well as an aerial photo of the site. The south side of Salem is located within Anderson Township. However, as you go to the north, it is within the city of Cincinnati there, so we do have some differences in zoning. Here's a proposed site plan showing this fence. The applicant has currently constructed the 6-foot-high privacy fence within the side yard area and is now requesting that they be permitted to keep that structure. The home was constructed in 2002, and a zoning certificate was issued for a privacy fence within the rear yard in 2007. Our offices were originally notified of this existing fence within the side yard area in April of 2014 and looked into it as a complaint. The tract is approximately .29 acres and has 70 feet of frontage along Salem. The topography is relatively flat, and the existing use is a single-family home. We have photos of the existing fence there, as well as views of the surrounding properties to the north. Again, those are properties that are located predominantly within the city of Cincinnati. So staff finds that the property in question will yield a reasonable return. Without the variance, the existing single-family home can be occupied. The variance is substantial. This property has a typical lot configuration, so the side yard is well-defined. It does not have a rear yard appearance like we have seen with some of our other corner lots. The property owner's predicament can be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. Quick-growing vegetation can be planted in that area as a screen. And finally, the spirit and intent of the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by not granting the variance. The side yard would remain open and unobstructed. So if you have any other questions for me?
Any questions for staff on this case?
Yes, one, the permit for the privacy fence in 2007.
Yes.
Could you describe that a little bit more completely? Is that the small section of fence in the side yard all the way in the back?
Correct. That was located here within this rear yard area.
And it was a short piece of that,
Right.
right next to a an accessory building on the other property. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Would you go back to the slides of the pictures?
Sure.
So in the top left, the fence is on the property with the house to the left, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay, going to the upper right-hand side, the existing fence right there, is that totally located within the rear yard?
That is within the rear yard of that structure, and it's actually a screen on their existing deck.
Screen on their deck, okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any variances for any other house close by?
No, there are not. There are several existing privacy fences within the side yard and surrounding areas, some of which may be existing non-conforming. We haven't received any complaints about any others previously. And then there's also several on-corner lots that kind of have a side yard appearance, but they actually belong to that corner lot house and are within their rear yard. And you should see a brief description of that.
Allison,
From Paul Drury.
the email response on that indicated that there was a variance for one.
Right, yep. That's 6775.
So there has been one variance for a side yard fence in that neighborhood.
As long as we're into those other exhibits, Allison, the 6799 Salem was not addressed in the email. What do we know about it, if anything? I know you just came back.
Nothing to record of it.
Nothing? Oh, nothing in the records then?
Correct.
Okay.
What's the, what height fence would be allowed right in there? That's a side yard.
It's a side yard area, so within side and front yard areas, we permit fences to be a maximum of 4 feet in height, and then they've got to be that 75% open.
4 feet and 75% open, okay.
So the old fence, the existing fence there was compliant because it is 75%
Right.
open and it's no more than 4 feet? Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Applicant like to come forward and present your case, please? Ms. Franklin? Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Cindy Franklin, and the home address is 6811 Salem Road. First of all, I'd like to say that, I put that, I'll call it a privacy fence, up thinking that I had proper zoning for it. The reason for that is in 2007, I moved into the home and put in the back left corner 2 pieces of privacy fence without permission to zone. I didn't know about zoning. So that was corrected, and at the same time, I received permission to fence my backyard or my property. When I decided to put this privacy fence up, I didn't look again at that zoning paper. I'm in the process of moving. The person who I contracted to put that up asked me if I had proper zoning. I told the person I did. So it was not done with, I was not doing it without trying to follow your regulations. Now that it's up, of course, I don't like the idea of having to take it down. And if in fact, yes, it is a fact that it can only be a 4-foot high fence, I would have never done that. It would not have served the purpose that I was trying to achieve. So I think this privacy fence does that. I've been wanting to do it for a long time and had not done it, and just made the decision to do it. And I still think it warrants. I still believe that it improves my property for several reasons. The house next to me is a rental home. Originally, the owner and I, we were very good friends, never had any problems, though, as you can see in one of the pictures, the back door to the basement faces my property. And over the course of several years, he and I had discussions about parties in the basement, beer cans in my yard, and we had a nice friendly arrangement, and most of the time that was taken care of. The house is now being rented. I absolutely love the neighbors, but in the future, I know they're moving, and therefore in the future, I'm going to have new rental people there. And when you drive into that driveway at night, and you have someone down in that basement well, it's scary. And so that also served the purpose. I see where you have suggested plantings. Over the course of 7 years, we've tried several things, and just, you know, the ones that you can see in the picture right now have taken 7 years to get there. So, you know, a little impatient, ready to put the fence up. And that's why I did it. And I would appreciate you considering allowing it to stay up. I don't know if you have any questions or not.
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Franklin, as the applicant? No question? No, go ahead.
I do have a quick question. There is, we do have a message of somebody asking us to stay with the zoning standards. I'm not sure of the location of this person, but the person says that the property is up for sale. Are you planning to move?
Yes, that is correct. The property is up for sale.
So you are moving, okay.
Yes. I have always maintained my yard, my home, everything about it, and again, I just would not have done it without realizing, I wouldn't have done it. And then I see no purpose in the privacy screen if I have to cut it down to 4 feet and take out every third board or every fourth board or whatever it would require to meet those standards. Then you're still going to have the same problem.
Yes, I understand. And the requirement would be 3 out of every 4 boards.
Yes.
Which would look worse.
Absolutely.
I understand.
And it's not attractive on the other side.
Any more questions? I can't tell from that picture. Are the support braces facing the blue house, or is it one of those double-sided fences? I can't tell.
I don't know what you mean by support. The plain side, the smooth side of the fence is facing my home. I guess that means the support braces are facing.
Sometimes there's like a double-sided fence, and it kind of looked like that's what that was, but I understand that it's not, so it's just curious. Any other questions for the applicant?
You know, as far as the owner of the blue home, that area is not used by them in any way. Maybe new renters would use it differently, but, you know, at this point in time, it's very unattractive.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the application? Yes, sir, please come forward. Name and address, please.
It's Ken Schmidt. I live at 765 Watch Point Drive.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Cindy and I have recently married, and that's the reason the house is up for sale. But I just want to mention, we talked about putting this fence up, and before we were married, I had the experience of pulling into the driveway at night and getting out of the car and seeing a cigarette light in the bottom of that stairwell. And I looked at it, it was kind of a creepy feeling, and it's happened, several times that when guests come to the house, that's happened, so that was one of the reasons. But Cindy and I did talk about it, and I looked at her old permit from 2007, and there was no mention, anything about, the red line went around the permit drawing to indicate where she had talked about putting a fence, but in the zoning papers that came with it, there was no mention about side yard being 4 foot and 75% open. So I didn't see any reason why not, and then just looking around the neighborhood, and I don't know if Allison submitted the pictures, but within a block of her house, there's 6 other homes that have 6-foot privacy fences in the side of their house. One's 2 houses away on both directions, and there's 4 other. Does the committee have those pictures?
We do, yes.
Okay. So, I looked around the neighborhood, and 2 things. I didn't think the fence would block the blue house's view in any possible way. It made us private. It took away kind of an ugly-looking situation. The picture at the upper right that shows their privacy fence, it's partially in the backyard, but it's also about halfway in the side yard, because about 6 or 8 feet of it is right behind our fence. So I didn't think it would be offensive to anybody there. And with all the other fences within a block of the house being the 6-foot side yard fences, I figured it was all right. So that was one reason we went ahead with it, and I thought the permit was good.
Does anybody have a question for Mr. Schmidt?
Not directly, Mr. Schmidt, it's more to staff. I tried to find the locations of those exhibits as I drove around the neighborhood, and I couldn't find them except for one. One I could find, it's a couple of doors down, and that's the one that I asked about the staff earlier, and we've got no record on that. But Allison, could you address the, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if this is the right place to do it, but ask staff to address those exhibits?
Sure, the only that were not included in that email from Paul to you all were 5 and 6, those locations, but 3, 4, 7, 8, and 9 do have addresses of their locations as well as a description and possible dates that they were constructed, some which predate the township zoning to their, one that we do know that is an illegal fence, that they have also been notified, as well as one that has a variance and one that is compliant because of the corner lot.
And the compliant lot is because it's not really considered a side yard, it is considered a
Correct,
backyard
that is
because of the
rear
corner.
yard.
So you did a lot of homework on that, and we saw those pictures, so we had some questions for staff on that, because
Sure.
we thought that was something we wanted to look into.
Right.
So
And, before we put it up, I had looked at all of those, and I thought, that there's very similar situations that would be all right. And the one fence around the corner is just brand new.
Is there any other questions for this witness? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, is there anybody that'd like to speak in opposition to it or provide information? Go ahead, ma'am, then we'll get to you, sir.
My name is Donna Terlindi. My address is 1178 Ayrshire. I live around the corner and up from where they're at. And my question, I guess, is really to you gentlemen, is what is the definition of the rear yard? On her property, the way her house is set, it makes it the backyard. But when you look at the house, when you're looking at from Salem Road, it's the side yard. So what is your definition of the rear for this house? And when you come up, I had a very nice friend come to visit me, and we were coming up Salem, and she said, that fence would never go in my community. You couldn't have that, because that's the side yard. You cannot have a closed fence. So you're the ones that have written the law, and I have a copy of the zoning, and it says that it has to be 75% open and cannot be more than 4 feet tall. And I think we need to enforce our laws if we're going to have the zoning laws. My next question to you gentlemen is, where are the inspectors? There are 3 houses on my street that have 8-foot fences in the backyard. I thought it was limited to 6. Do we have inspectors, or have we had cutbacks and don't have them anymore? That's my question to you gentlemen. Do we have inspectors?
Pretty much appreciate your questions. Those are good questions. You kind of raised some of the age-old questions of what's the rear yard and what's the side. Pretty much what the board does is we're here to take information and evidence. And what we'll do is we'll take your questions.
Okay.
And then when we get to the discussion, if the board, and I think you're asking good questions, the board members can then pose that back to staff to answer some of your questions on. And I noted one about the inspections, and also you've observed some
It's just
tall
that
fences.
this little paragraph on your website, it's very ambiguous, because there's no definition of what the rear of the house is. There's no definition of the front of the house. I mean, you know, if you turn the house because that's how you want to fit it into the lot, does that still become front for them or front for us?
Right.
See? So that's why I
understand
would like
your
some
question.
definitions
Yep.
or something, you know.
We might have Ms. Hodson weigh in on that in a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
after we finish taking
Yeah,
testimony.
and, you know, what about the inspectors? I've never seen an inspector in my neighborhood, and I've been there 67 years. You know, the only time something like this comes up is when somebody gets caught not getting a permit, and someone complains. If someone was out there with their job of inspecting, this case would have never, they would have never got the fence up. The inspector would have seen it going up, and he would have halted it. I know that's what happened in a community where a friend of mine lived. They were starting to put it up, and they said, oh, you can't do that. And he said, okay. So he went and found out what the laws of the zones were, and then he corrected it.
Very good. Do you have any other comments specific to this particular?
I just
I hear
don't
some
like
of your-
it. I think it's tacky. It's solid boards. I mean, you know, it just doesn't look good for our community to see something like that on the side of the house, and everybody thinks it's in the front. So then everybody else are going to start putting up these privacy fences too? I'm really concerned about that. And I appreciate you letting me make my comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Just believe, sir, would you like to come forward next? Thank you. Yes, you can speak from over there. It's fine.
My name's Rick Perkinson, live at 6819 Salem, right on the other side of Franklin's. I guess the only thing I want to mention, or I have a little concern about, is if you approve the appeal, the Franklins, as they said, their house is for sale and they're going to be moving. What my concern is, they're not going to have the benefit of the appeal. The neighbors who are left are going to have to put up with the appeal. In other words, it's kind of them deserting it, and then we're left with the fence. And I would just ask you to take that into consideration.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Perkinson?
Yes, Mr. Perkinson, are you related to the person Jean Perkinson?
It's my wife.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for the prior witness? I think I forgot to ask that. No questions? Okay. Anybody else like to speak in opposition or provide any other information on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and, Yes, you need to, if you come up there again, this is the applicant again. It's okay.
I guess it's in reference to the lady that spoke. On my piece of property, what is the side yard? I'd like to know.
Right. We're going to pursue that question
Okay.
with Ms. Hudson during our discussion.
Okay.
Because that is a good question.
And once again, you know, I probably could have just gone ahead and fenced the whole back part. I mean, I didn't, again, it was not done to upset anyone. I really thought I was doing a good thing, so, and didn't mean to upset neighbors, but obviously I have. So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Anybody else like to speak on this case? Allison, while we have that question on the floor, why don't we go ahead and, could you address that for
Got a
us?
copy of your zoning resolution with you. Page 133 actually has diagrams of what is a front, side, and rear lot on a typical lot configuration like this, where you have a standard kind of rectangular lot with only street frontage along one street, in this case Salem. It also has diagrams for something like this property that's got 2 street frontages, in this case both on Salem and Ayrshire. So that is defined within our zoning resolution. In this particular property, the rear yard is anything from this back corner of the home back to this rear property line. Side yard being anything from the front corner of the home to the back corner of the home on either side, in this case here and here, and then front yard anything in front of that corner. It does not matter which direction the home faces, where the entrance is, where the exit is. What it really depends on is the shape of the property as well as its street frontage.
So Allison, on this case, I know when we get into some corner lot configurations, we have a little more ambiguity, but in this case, it's straightforward. The side
Correct.
yard's from the front is what faces Salem, and it's from the front of that house to the back of that house is the
Correct.
side yard.
Yep.
Thank you.
She has one more question for the board, if you'd indulge the applicant. It's okay.
Allison, would you please define the blue house side yard and backyard for me? Thank you.
So on this property, again, it's not based on which direction the home is facing. So here, their front yard is this area forward. Their rear yard, it looks like this may be a bump out. So rear yard would be from this area backwards, and side from this front corner of the home to this rear corner of the home, this side and this side.
Any questions for Ms. Hodson on that? Is there anybody else to speak on this case? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Now we'll get into the deliberation of the cases, and can take a straw vote. Let's go back to case 4, 2014. Mr. Croup, Mr. and Mrs. Croup, 8001 Evening Whisper Way, requesting the variance for the garage setback. Somebody like to lead off discussion or comment on that?
I'm certainly a lot more comfortable with this, having the layout. I think there's a couple things that I find to kind of distinguish this case from many others. If you look at where the area of the setback is, it actually goes from 0 at the rear of the garage, where it's conforming, and, you know, the maximum is 5 foot, so I don't particularly think that's substantial. And then the way they've got the side yard, the side of the garage broken up with a window, and the rear of the garage is actually, that portion of it's all within the setback anyway. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it meets our standards, and particularly when you realize that across the street is not the front of another house, but actually looks at the rear of houses that are set back pretty substantially. So I'm pretty comfortable with this one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Oberschmidt. Any other remarks from the board?
I agree with Mr. Overschmidt's observations, and and agree with his support of granting the variance. The other considerations in my mind would be that the construction essentially matches the existing residence, and so it makes it look like how it would have been constructed in the first place, and it is similar to other structures along that same side of that street. So the real difference is the 5-foot at the extreme deviation, which is, in the grander scheme of things, very tough to determine, very tough to observe. So I support granting the variance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hayes. Further comment from the board? Mr. Johnson?
This is much more detailed than the last one, but basically what I had imagined it was going to look like, so I think it probably will look like it had been there from the original construction, and I think this variance is very insignificant.
Thank you.
Can you go to the site and the aerial? Yeah, that's good, thank you. We've always dealt with corner lots. We're looking at the possibility of having an accessory building that could be included in the rear yard. And I am in agreement with my colleagues here that we are adding a structure that is intended to look as a part of the original structure with matching brick, matching materials, and to me is a superior solution than adding something into the rear yard, which would be allowed in accordance with zoning code. So I am certainly in favor with everyone else here of granting the variance because of that. We are allowing an extension into a required yard, and yet, in my mind, keeping open space open.
Okay, thank you, board, for the comments. Would somebody like to form a motion on this?
Be happy to. Mr. Chairman, I move we grant the variance requested in case number 4-2014 BZA to allow the front yard setback to be 35 feet instead of 40 feet as required for the following reasons. The variance is not substantial. The variance would not adversely affect the delivery of government services. The property owner's predicament cannot be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance. The spirit and intent behind the zoning requirements observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance, and the essential character of the neighborhood is not substantially altered due to the fact that the variance is only 5 feet at a portion of the garage, and another portion of the garage is actually all within the setback, that the design is consistent with the existing structure, and that the property across the street and the closest proximity to it is actually rear-facing property, and it's very open at that point, and that with the landscaping plan that the applicant has taken the appropriate steps to minimize the impact. I would say that the variance that the construction needs to be in substantial compliance with the elevation plans and landscaping plans received on April 21st, 2014, that the applicant commence construction of the project within 1 year and complete it within 2 years of our action.
Okay, thank you very much.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
That was beautifully done.
Nicely done.
Steve Kramer.
Aye.
Fred Hayes.
Aye.
Rick Oversmith.
Aye.
Brian Johnson.
Aye.
Brian Earl.
Aye. All right. So congratulations, and then we'll put this in a formal resolution perhaps this evening, and then staff will be back in touch with you.
Yes, I'll issue the zoning report.
Thank you. Okay, next case for discussion, 5-2014, 6811 Salem Road, one we just heard about the fence variance for height and also the openness of it. Discussion among the board. I guess I'll just give a little additional background before we jump into discussion, which was we did receive the exhibits, and the applicant did a lot of legwork going around and showing different fences in the neighborhood. And the question one of the things we look at is the character of the neighborhood, and one of the questions I posed back to Ms. Hodson is, what is the status of some of these fences? And what we learned in investigating them is some of them are illegally constructed. One of them received a variance back in '04 based on unique circumstances of that case. I don't believe any of us, I'm pretty sure none of us heard that case, but that board did grant a variance for it. There was one or two instances where, depending on your perspective, you looked at it and it looked like the side yard for one property, but it was actually the rear yard for the adjoining. And then there was a couple that we couldn't find. So, there's a variety of different, and there's some that are non-conforming out there as well that we learned. So what non-conforming means is that they existed before the township had its zoning, and the township had these restrictions on that. So that's kind of the situations. You just have to live with those. You can't make people remove those. Now, maybe before we get into the discussion, I guess there were a couple kind of side questions posed on inspection and fence height elsewhere. I guess the comment I'd have on that is the township offices welcome if you believe there are violations in your neighborhood. That's what the staff is here to take those cases, and they go out and investigate them, and they take them seriously. As far as inspections go, Allison, maybe you want to speak on that. I know we don't.
We have one zoning inspector as well as one property maintenance code inspector. Both do operate solely on a complaint basis. That's what the trustees have chosen. So if you see something and you believe that it's in violation, or you just have a question about what it is and where it is and what's going on somewhere, always call us. We're happy to go out and look into stuff. But again, it is that complaint basis.
Okay, very good. So thanks for that information. So now we can circle back and look at this case at 6811 Salem Road. We saw some photos. Maybe you could bring up the photo of showing the fence. I thought that was really helpful. That one. Who'd like to start off discussion on this? Mr. Hayes, would you like to start?
Not really, but I will. Well, I find it unfortunate in some misunderstandings about the permissibility of the fence. From the facts of the situation, it's clear that it's in the side yard. It's clear that it is non-compliant. And while it's unfortunate that it already exists, I am in favor of not granting the variance because of the intention of the zoning regulations is to keep our neighborhoods as open and as green and as spacious as possible, except for the allowance of fencing backyards. but that's precisely why the zoning regulations exist, and so I am in favor of not granting this variance.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Who else would like to make a comment on this case?
I agree. I think the fence is nice, but to me, it also seems to be a little out of place. If it would go all the way back, it would seem more pleasing to the eye. It would also be more greater variance. And I think there was a safety issue or a possible safety issue, but if the applicant is preparing to move, that kind of negates that one reason to grant the variance.
Thank you.
Though I am empathetic with the current property owner's concerns with the rental property next door, they really are, in my mind, not a basis for granting the variance. I think Mr. Hayes said appropriately what the code provides. So I, too, am not in favor of granting this variance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Haber. Mr. Overschmidt, did you have any thoughts on this?
No, I do think that the fence does seem out of place. Now, that may be because it's brand new and it sticks out when you drive by and you kind of notice it. And granted, clearly, the homeowner innocently put this up, and there was not an intent to intentionally violate our zoning code. But the test is, is there a feasible alternative? And, you know, you can do a 75% open fence that's 4 feet high, and we see those throughout the township, combined with landscaping that would probably give an alternative. Would it be as good as, in terms of blocking the view and providing not being scared by somebody coming up through the neighbor's basement? No, but it's an alternative, and it's probably a viable one. So it's an unfortunate situation. I think the zoning code's the zoning code, and obviously we're here to decide if there is enough reason to create a variance off the zoning code. And if you look at our standards, whether the property yields a reasonable return or beneficial use of the property without the variance, clearly I don't think that one's satisfied. The adjoining property suffering detriment as a result of the variance is in question. We've heard testimony from others in the neighborhood who do believe that is suffering a detriment. I don't think this impacts the delivery of government services. And I think, in my mind, it comes down to whether there's some way to obviate this other than the variance. And I think you frankly could have put up a 75% combined with landscaping and obviated the problem. Close call, though. Close call.
Okay, thank you. And my thoughts on it was, when I went out there and looked at it and drove by, it actually didn't seem that noticeable to me, and because it's set back. But what was very interesting is this reverse shot that we see here on the screen, which I didn't go out and look at it from that perspective, and that kind of reminded me, I think, a little bit of why the zoning code has the 4-foot restriction typically, because you see, although it actually fits in fairly well with the applicant's house, it creates a very narrow, appears to be closed-in feeling on the blue house. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why you have that limitation on the side yard typically. And then secondly, we heard some, I think, genuine concerns about being fearful and safety issues, and no question when you would drive into your driveway and then see something unexpected in the shadows, that would be troubling. However, on the flip side of that, when I look at this, the result of this fence as it impacts the neighbor's house, the blue house, I could see, we didn't have any testimony from that property owner or the landlord, but it really does block off that back area where there would be at least some degree of public view of what's going on in the side yard of that house. So I think there could be some question there of we resolve one situation to the detriment of another property. So that would be my thoughts on that. So would somebody like to fashion a motion on this case?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board deny the deny the request for a variance on case number 5-2014 BZA, property in question at 6811 Salem Road, for the following reasons. The property in question will yield a reasonable return even without granting the variance. The variance is substantial, as witnessed from some of the testimony of neighbors. The essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered if we granted variances to build large side yard fences. And the property owner's predicament could feasibly be obviated through some other method, as mentioned by landscaping.
Second.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Steve Hayward,
Aye.
Fred Hay,
Aye.
Rick Eversman.
Aye.
Brian Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Ellis.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. And we'll put this next month in a formal resolution. Allison will get that to you. Thank you for coming. All right. Depending on how we're coming on our resolution, we could take a 5-minute break or put it up on the screen.
I had not seen Rick Perkinson for many years. He was head of facilities over at Christ Hospital for 2 years.
Ready for us to take a look at it? Okay, we have a draft of the resolution that fast.
Somebody was anticipating.
I was ahead of myself because I knew I'd be out of town.
Okay. Good thinking.
But that also means I haven't looked at this one.
Let's see if we can help you out here. Okay, is anybody not ready to scroll up a little bit? Why don't we go ahead and scroll up? Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm probably freaking out. I'm typing.
I don't know if we need to reference the March 12th plans.
I would, just because that's the one that's got the site plan and setback stuff on it. I don't know if our landscape plan does.
Is that the date of the elevation drawings as well? Let's
Yeah,
see,
the
we-
landscape plan that he submitted this past month does not have the setback on it, so we will need to reference the March ones
I
too.
thought they did show it.
Yeah, that doesn't have a setback on it.
I thought they had the line there. They showed 40-foot existing setback line.
No, we need the actual distance written on there. It's a quirk.
Okay.
I wonder if we should add in that, this looks pretty good to me, but I wonder if we should add in that first line, that the comments in the straw motion, that the variance is fairly, I know we say it's not substantial, but part of that was because it varied from, the new structure varied from requiring no variance to 5 feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, isn't it, Allison? That's a good point, thank you.
Say minimally.
Do we want to put a distance in there?
I might think we should say
Only for part of the structure.
proposed structure, yeah, somehow.
Something like ranging from 0 to 5 feet, something like that?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think that's what yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Maybe we should take let's scroll it down the rest of the way. Is everybody ready to scroll down? Every once in a while, we see something funny here.
Oops, sorry, I'm gonna mess with it by. Gotta get the spacing right.
Okay.
You ready to go?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to case, BZA case 4-2014, I move that we approve and journalize the case.
Second?
Motion and a second, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Steve Haver,
Aye.
Fred Hayes,
Aye.
Rick Overton,
Aye.
Brian Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Miller.
Aye. Okay, thank you for getting that done so quickly. Is there any further business?
Surely the next one is ready too, right?
Yes, but we have to wait a month to deny it.
Yes. Do you want us to review the draft, or?
Or do you send it to Gary? You gonna send it to Gary?
Yeah, I usually send
Just send
Yeah.
it to Gary, and then they'll distribute it in the next packet, and we can look it over.
I want to compliment the chair again on running a very efficient
Hey.
and timely meeting.
Thank you. Shall we call this meeting, shall we adjourn this meeting?
We should.
All right. Thank you.